Hello and welcome to the On the Knob pod, brought to you by otnsports.co.uk. Make sure you check out otnsports.co.uk for all the best betting tips. I'm your host, Will Rooney, and today we are changing our attention from the jump season to the international scene. We're going to be looking at two of the biggest days racing in the international calendar. Of course, we've got the Melbourne Cup coming up and the Breeders' Cup meeting, and I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Sky Sports Racing pundit Tim Carroll. Tim, thanks very much for joining us.
Oh, not a problem, lads. My pleasure. Good to be here.
Tim, can I just ask you, you've obviously been through the scenario of lockdowns and shutdowns and not having any racing and being away from home. How's it been for you from a racing perspective, being over here?
Yeah, oh, look, I haven't minded. I've sat at home and had a few beers, actually. I've got one in front of me now, so I might be hitting the gym over the next 6 months or so. But yeah, look, it's a little bit tough because I normally get home. I normally go back to Australia once a year for a holiday, and I normally go down for the championships and do a bit of work for Sky. So kind of miss the family and friends back home. But hey, it is what it is. And, you know, there's a lot of people who have got it far tougher than I have.
Can I ask you a question? We all can't stand the Tories on this podcast. If there's any Tories, and then turn off now. But how do you make of how the UK have handled COVID restrictions to Australia? Because obviously Australia have been quite stringent, haven't they, over there?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I actually swing vote, so I can appreciate half of what you're saying there, and I think the current mob are pretty useless, but we won't go there. I think at first it was absolute shit. Oh, excuse me, am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, of course.
I apologise if I'm not. Apologies. I think they were really bad. Vaccination-wise, I think they've been very good, to be fair. They got it right. Whereas it's kind of been the opposite in Australia. They were very good to start with. They did their lockdowns. They're very strict over there. They're still being very strict. I'm not exactly sure what happened with the vaccination process because they were going to be one of the first to vaccinate. It didn't work out. I don't know whether they got the wrong batch or whatever it was. And subsequently, I think a lot of them are only just coming out of lockdowns that we were doing sort of 6-8 months ago now. So it's kind of been the complete opposite over there to what it has been here. Really good start, bad finish. And
the three that are joining us today, Tim, are three regular guests. We've got Henry Gibbs, Paul Martin, and across from the Irish Sea is Darren. Darren, I believe that this was the podcast last year with Tim that enticed you into us, and I bet you a year on you're thinking, why the hell did I start listening to these idiots? It's absolute bollocks.
Yeah, few drinks on you say, well done lads, that was great. Yeah, absolutely. No, I love the Melbourne Cup for me and Cheltenham are nearly the same in excitement terms. I love the Melbourne Cup. I made it down for Rekindling's year. I was there and lucky enough to have backed them anti-posts at a few big prices, and they made for a great trip. Yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing for next Tuesday morning.
Paul, I'll come to you next. We've just had about 4 pints together there and a little bar by ours, but you're very enthused for the racing that's coming up because this is your tail end, isn't it, for a few months in the winter where you can't stand the jumps. So this is it almost culminates, doesn't it, for you to enjoy the racing and then go into hibernation.
Oh yeah, this is me. Me last hurrah until Maidan starts in March. So I've got me Hong Kong action to keep me going. There's a couple of great ones on the Sundays, but yeah, this is I'll start to hibernate now. So obviously I'll still back Cheltenham, but I'll have a go on the jumps, but doesn't get me juices flowing like these, like especially the breed. I think it's just the razzmatazz. You know, America, they do everything, you know, the firewear and all that carry on. So it suckers me in a little bit. So yeah, it's always the highlight for me of to see it. I actually prefer this one to like Royal Ascot, York. It's always the one that I'm pumped for the most, the breeders, and then say you have the Melbourne Cup as the entree on the Tuesday, and then that takes us then to the Friday. So it's one of my favourite weeks of the year for sure.
And Henry, two flyers racing up the Melbourne Ratepayers Club will get your juices flowing. So how's the Breeders' Cup compared to other meetings for you?
Yeah, I do love the Breeders' Cup. I think anyone who loves horse racing, you've got to love the spectacle that is the Breeders' Cup. I think over this side of this year in the UK, I think time, and I love settling in, having a nice time, having a nice quiet few drinks, and just enjoying the action. Really, it's a nice. Obviously, it's night time over here, isn't it? So, we can have a few pints and enjoy it. So yeah, Breeders' Club's certainly up there for me.
Completely agree with you. It's just fitting with everything, doesn't it? But before the Breeders' Cup, we've got the race that stops the nation, which is the Melbourne Cup. And Tim, obviously, you being an Aussie nation, I'll come to you because there's been a lot of, I don't want to say controversy, but a lot of talk about the Melbourne Cup. Some people are saying red tape and the hoops that people have got to run, have got to jump over to run in the Melbourne Cup this year. There've been a lot of changes. Tim, for you, with the changes that are being made, as a native, what do you make of what has happened over in Australia for foreign runners to enter the race?
Yeah, look, I think it's very tough. I think the majority of Australians actually welcome the internationals. If you have a look at the Caulfield Cup, there was a lot of talk on social media where they were saying, well, wonderful performance from the winner, but it would have been nice to have a few more internationals here to really test him because he's obviously a good horse. My take on it is what you guys have got to understand, and this is what I've tried to explain to people over here, and there's been a lot said on social media, there's been a lot said also in the general media. I think my take on it is I don't like the radioactive dye MRI scan. I can see why people are a bit upset about that because it is quite intrusive. I'm a horseman myself, so I get that. I've seen it in action, and it will put a horse off its feet, and you'll have to leave the horse alone for a few days. But I think people need to understand over here that we have had international runners in the last 7 years. The ratio of fatalities is 1 in 16. That's 1.5 horses per race if you were to run 24 horses. The impact that's had down there is, and I've been over here for 17 years, has been horrendous as far as the anti-racing people go. Now, Australia, like over here, you're going to get that small group that are anti-racing, but because of these fatalities, all of a sudden that has got a massive platform where you've got well-known politicians. I'm not talking about those sort of politicians that don't get a haircut for 10 years or something. I'm talking politicians from leading parties. Sports people, celebrities have jumped on the bandwagon. Taylor Swift, actually, who's probably one of the biggest female stars in the world, was booked to go down there and perform, and there was a big thing against Taylor on social media, and she didn't end up going down. That's how bad it's become. I don't think people over here that have made a lot of comment realise the pressure the VRC are under. My take on it is very simple. I'm not sure if the VRC have taken the right measures. I don't even think they know. But something had to happen because it had just become ridiculous. You're talking about a jurisdiction that has a fatality rate it is 1 in over 2,000. It's about 1 in every 2,200 or something. All of a sudden, their main race is having a fatality rate of internationals of 1 in 16. The one thing I won't cop, and you've probably seen me do 1 or 2 other things on media recently, is people saying it's to stop the internationals coming down, to stop the winners. That's a load of baloney. It annoys me so much when people say that. The VRC spent literally tens of millions to turn it into an international race, and now they're reaping the dividend because of that. They've made a lot of money doing that. If you really wanted to stop the internationals, if that's all it was about, or even mostly about, how many winning your in races are there outside of Victoria? Absolutely none. You could have the Sydney Cup, Adelaide Cup, Perth Cup. You could have races in New Zealand. You can make them win in your in, and that way you're going to ensure that you've got 12, 14, 16 local runners. You do not need to go through that process. And I made this point as well. There's a bloke down there by the name of Vin Cox, a very respected horseman. He basically made the Magic Millions what it is now, one of the most successful sales anywhere in the world. Vince is the general manager of Godolphin in Australia, which makes him the highest person up the food chain in Godolphin in the Southern Hemisphere. He was on the steering committee that made these recommendations. Now, do you think the general manager of Godolphin in the Southern Hemisphere is going to sign off on measures that are going to make it more difficult for his boss to bring horses down there simply because he's a bit jealous about a few European winners? I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous. As far as the measures go, like I said, I think some of them are absolutely right, and I think they had to happen. There's 1 or 2 that don't sit well with me.
What would your solution be, Tim? Because if the shoe was on the other foot and we had all these Australian raiders coming over to, say, Royal Ascot, there wouldn't be the same fuss kicked up, would there?
I think there would if you were losing 1 in 16 internationals at Royal Ascot. Can you imagine Australian horses dropping dead in front of the Queen every year?
True.
I think there would be a big uproar. Again, I can't emphasise enough what impact it's had down there. I think it is protectionism, but I think it's protectionism of the race against the anti-racing people, not Europeans going down there. The other thing is too, a lot of people have said the trainers down there have had a whinge and that. Look, I know a lot of trainers down there, and sure, there's one or two that sort of say, I'm sick of these bloody Europeans coming down and taking all these big pots. We're not a staying nation. There's a lot of pots down there, all right? Most of them are actually in sprinting mile races. There is something like 3,600, 3,700 registered trainers in Australia. And I reckon I could count on one hand those that have come out and had a whinge. And the majority of those that have a whinge aren't the people getting horses into the race. And the people that are getting horses into the race, the Chris Waddles, the Freemans, the Waterhouses and that, they've been buying European horses or getting European horses for years. Why are they about to slag off the supply line? I mean, most of them have got a dozen ex-Europeans sitting in their yard ready to go. As far as the solution goes, look, I don't know the solution. I just know something had to happen. I think what they've done is absolutely right, except for maybe the MRI scan. I think that's probably taken it a step too far, and people like Charlie Fellows and Nathan O'Brien, well, if they haven't said as much, they've certainly alluded to it. But just one thing, guys, let's not forget, state of rest. He's just won the Cox Plate last weekend, so it can be done.
So, Tim, we hear about all these horses, you know, they're not staying in the UK, they're getting moved to Australia. You know, big fees are paid for 99, 100 races horses. Do you think it's a bit poor on Australian races' behalf that they're happy to lap up UK horses coming over and being bought, but they're not happy for UK horses to come over and essentially come and take the race? Yep, I couldn't agree more. I think what if you look at the Cox Plate now, and I think, to be fair, I think State of Rest, and I said this after he won in America, I think this horse is just coming into his own. I think he might be a little bit better than his European form, which suggests, and it wouldn't surprise, I'm not about to say he's going to come here and mop up Group 1s, but I think he might come back and actually be quite handy. But if you go back, 20 years back, Grandira went down there. Now, Grandira had just beaten Hawkwing in the Irish Champion Stakes. 2 starts before that, he'd won the Prince of Wales. I think he had a rating that was certainly at least in the high 20s, might have been 130 odd. He went down there, and to be fair to the horse, he ran a belter. He finished third, and behind a very good horse. But you're sending a horse down that was basically rated 130 that couldn't win the race only 20 years ago. If you sent a 130 horse down there now, it'd be the 3's on favourite. I mean, all right, if there was a So You Think or a Winx there, it might not. But every other year, it'd be a 3's on favourite. And I don't actually, I think it's twofold here. There's just so much emphasis on speed in Australia. There's so many pots down there that they're all breeding to speed stallions. You can barely stand a Derby winner in Australia, honestly. The big starts won't take them because it's just not the demand. The other thing is too, and I've witnessed it myself, and I don't know how long we've got in this podcast, but I can tell you a story about the sort of here and now kind of mentality of the Australian owners, and it's a case of some people maybe having a little bit more money than sense. I'll tell you this story very quickly if I can. A few years back, I was in Germany at the Baden-Baden meeting, and there was a leading trainer there from Australia, and they wanted to buy a horse, and I was part of the group there. And he says, do you mind having a look at them in the paddock? It was before a big race. And I picked a horse out that I thought would be, they wanted to buy a horse for the Melbourne Cup, sorry. This is in September, so it had to be nominated, qualified, likely to get in, all this sort of thing. So we're there for this big race, picked a horse out, nice big sort. Small horses don't win the Melbourne Cup, mostly because stays normally aren't small. Secondly, it has been a rough race in the past, and small horses just get knocked around like a pinball. So I sort of spotted this horse, made a mention of it. They went for this other horse. I'm not going to say who the trainer was or who the horse was, but it won the Guineas in Germany. But it wasn't tiny, but it was a small horse. It was absolutely skiddy. Honestly, it would not run 2 mile down a well. And I said, that's not a Melbourne Cup type horse. And the trainer said to me, he said, it doesn't matter. The owner just wants a horse in the Melbourne Cup that's qualified. Now, if you've got that sort of mentality, and they had over 1 million Australians, so at the time I think it was about £500,000-600,000 that they were prepared to spend on this horse. And I'm just looking at it thinking, so if you've got that sort of mentality, if you're prepared to go and buy a horse that's probably going to be a miler for a 2 mile race in Australia, what do you think's going to happen? You know, so, and I know not every owner's doing that, but there's too much of that mentality. And what's happened is the middle distance in Australia now has gone like that.
Whereas the sprinting ranks just keep getting stronger and stronger, to be fair. There might not be a black caviar down there, but believe you me, there's some very good sprinters. I mean, the last 3 July Cup winners to go down there have faced off against nearly 70 Australian horses, and between them beaten 6 home.
Definitely. Well, last year, Tim, when you come on the podcast, you give us the winner of the Melbourne Cup, 26-1, I think it was, Twilight Payment. I think Paul actually is still getting the ale in, because normally he doesn't go to the bar, but because he backed that, he's been persistently going to the bar since Twilight Payment, 26-1. Obviously, this year we have a very short price favourites in incentivise. Won the Caulfield Cup 6-4, 13-8, depending on what bookmaker you back. But Melbourne Cup, you know the hustle and bustle. Is that a fair price? Would you be backing it at 13-8?
No, I probably wouldn't back it at 13-8, to be honest. They're saying he's going to be the shortest price runner in the Melbourne Cup since Far Lap. And when you consider horses like Kingston Town, so you think more recently, some of the brilliant champions that have gone around in the race, I think he's probably a little bit too short, but if you put me up against the wall and put a gun to my head and said pick the winner of the Melbourne Cup, I'd certainly be saying incentivised. When he won the Caulfield Cup the other day, Timeform, and I know the lads who do the ratings in Australia for Timeform, and believe you me, they are actually quite conservative. They don't come up with big numbers for the hell of it, and I'm pretty sure they put 128 on it. Now, I don't need to tell you boys, 128's, over 2,400 metres would put you in the mix over here in a Group 1 race. So he's obviously very good. He's probably going to go off now, the shortest price favourite since Far Lap, around about 90 years ago. And again, for anyone that doesn't know Far Lap, that's kind of our Frankel, if you know what I mean. Like, he's the greatest horse that Australia/New Zealand's ever seen. So, would I take 6-4, 13-8? No is my answer, but I do think that he's probably going to win the race. I think only bad luck will beat him. No, I'm sorry to be boring, but that's my honest take on it.
Well, don't be boring. Give us a selection outside of him. Give us a pick that you thought, do you know what, that's a big price, and I'll be on him.
Well, I tell you, Twilight Payment, last year ran so well in the race. The race panned out how we thought it would. Now, people might say I'm just saying it because I tipped him up last year, but I don't think it's an overly strong renewal this year. There's some good horses there, but not necessarily good 2-milers. Obviously, we're lacking a lot of Europeans this year. He is the wrong age, and he's got the wrong weight, 58 kilos. They don't tend to carry that sort of weight to win a Melbourne Cup, and certainly I think he's 8 over here and 9 over there. They don't win at that age, but he's in very good form. His form hasn't dropped off. I think the race will be run, it'll probably be run a little bit differently this year, but I don't think it'll be run poorly for him. I can't see why he can't hit the frame, and he could be a cracking bet, at least for each way players.
Obviously been over to the Melbourne Cup before and had a very good time, a nice little winner. So tell us that anecdote about when you were over there, if anyone fancies going over in the future, and tell us your fancy for the race this year.
Yeah, well, one thing I can say is I can't wait to get back to it, and if anyone is ever thinking of going, it's definitely a someday out, I have to say. For me, just the crowds, I was just amazed how well the whole day is organised. Going for trains, you can't go to a football game over here and wait for trains that never turn up. Everything just turned up out so well for the day. Had rekindling back the from anti-post from a long way out in the hope that he may well go. It was as much luck as anything else, and it was a great day. As for this year, it's really looking forward to it. I think it's disappointing with what's gone on with the restrictions and that. And I don't know, if, Tim, if you heard what Joseph O'Brien said around state arrest, and that's disappointing, because I was kind of thinking state arrest winning may well show the way, and if maybe Twilight Payment that can get into the frame, next year might not be talking about this. But I'd just be concerned with some of the quotes Joseph said about the horse having to be sedated three or four times for the scan and that. So, and he may not have gone down if he didn't know what the horse was going to go through. So maybe that's what they need to hear in VRC, and maybe they'll change things around on that, because it is disappointing. And the Europeans obviously make our big part of the day now, because it has become such an international day. I can't have incentivise at the price. He could easily be, a top class horse in a handicap, but the price. We haven't had the barrier draw yet. But I'm not as worried about the barrier draw as maybe I think the Aussies really seem to have a thing about it, Tim, mate. You know, I was looking over the likes of Almandon winning from 17, Heartbreak City was second from 23, you know, Cross Counter 19, Vaughan Declare 21. You know, they all came out of car park barrier draws and got there.
You do have a nice long run there before you turn, Darren.
Yeah. So it just might not be the, you know, the big. When I started taking a real interest in it, I always thought, you know, mid to low. But the more I look at it, the more I think, you know, it's still, you know, you're not kind of totally out of it. The year I went down, I was lucky enough to chat. I tell you what, one of the best things that the festival was that tell the lads the day before there's a parade in Melbourne.
Yeah.
It's class, isn't it? All the owners and trainers all go through the city, basically the city centre in old sports cars with the colours of the you know, it's a really good touch, and you can get to talk to them as well. So I actually got to talk to one of Willie Mullins' lads, and Thomas Hobson had, I think, got 24 barrier 24 that year, rekindling's year. And he basically said, no chance. We're not even, you know, I think he was actually pretty much like, you know, we're going on the beer because we're not going to win a Melbourne Cup 24. You know, I mean, in fairness, I'd say they were shocked.
Like you guys need an excuse.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. He got sixth in the end, which was a great run because they did not expect that from him. But but back to Incensewise. Yeah, he could be something special, but I don't know. I just can't at that price. With 24 in the field, anything can happen. I do think they'll try and stretch his pace or his stamina with Twilight Payment, because I think with his weight, I know it's going to be tough for him to go out there and take them on. But when you looked at it last year, I mean, he had a lot of horses off the bridle pretty early when you look back at towards the mid to the end. So I just have a feeling Twilight Payment is a smash and bet each way. But if you're still getting 14-1, which it was, I think it's a smash and bet. And he has good form. He's come into this. Probably come into it in as good, if not better, form this year with the second in the Ledger. He won the Ledger Trial with Princess Zoe behind him. I just think, the 2 mile 4 furlong Ascot Gold Cup where he was well beaten, and I know Spanish Mission finished ahead of him, but an extra 4 furlongs, can do that to any horse. So I'm really keen on him. My anti-post bet, who I'm delighted to say has snuck in, is Sir Lugan. I can't believe he's got in, because I looked at it a couple of weeks ago and he was 57th in the list, and I thought that's the end of that. And I'm just glad it was done on the app and not on paper, because I nearly would have had dockets gone and all. So I'm delighted he's in. He's there with a featherweight. I think he's getting £17 from the top, from Twilight Payment, and that's a serious weight. Now he's to prove himself. I think the Ledger was the plan to get him placed for the automatic qualification for the Melbourne Cup, which I think was similar to Rekindling and possibly Latrobe over the years. But then and he was quite disappointing. But afterwards, the connections reported the ground was officially good to soft, but the jockeys all came in. If you look back and said it was very sticky ground, and he didn't like it and he didn't go on it. So I think if we can forget the Ledger, which I was so disappointed with, because I was convinced that was his route into it. And I suppose Glenn Boss is a book to ride him, 3 times Cup winner, and I'm very much more confident having him on board than Frankie, who was on in the last couple of races on him. Nothing against Frankie, but I think let the Aussies lads do what they know best in the Cup. So yeah, look, if he can get, the only thing is, he needs to be a little bit closer, because I just have that fear that they might just go all out with Twilight Payment after working so well last year, and he could just, he could just kind of pull a lot of them along. But he would be my hopeful fancy. in it, and Twilight Payment. But you know what? I think if Incentivize wins, I'd be quite happy, because I think we need a superstar down there, and so that we can go back to the days of, will they bring him over, who'll go on and take him on, and what have you.
He's trained by Peter Moody as well, who, of course, Black Caviar fame. And the thing is, we were sort of talking off air. I mean, the sprinters down there are obviously very good. I don't think anyone would argue that. But that the middle distance horses are dropping a little bit. And I just wonder with Peter, because you've got to remember, Peter likes a bit of banter as well. I know he upset a few people up here talking about, Anne Neesham and Sir Michael Stout. But I just wonder if he'd be tempted to come over here, because he's got that mindset, sort of like a cricketer, I suppose, in the Ashes. He loves coming over here and taking on the English and that type of thing. And I mean, if time form are right, and he's a 128 horse, well, he wouldn't be out of place over here. But we've got to see if he wins the Melbourne Cup first, I suppose.
Yeah, but it would, like I say, I won't be backing him. But if he wins, I'd be quite happy to see as well, because I think it's great for Australian racing as well, because, as you say, with the Everest and all the sprints. But at the end of the day, it is the Melbourne Cup, and we want to see superstars winning there. And for all the Europeans that have gone down, they haven't been superstars.
I should point out, guys, while you're stirring the Aussie up here, when Val de Clare won it in 2019, he was one of only 2 Australian-bred horses in the race. Bit embarrassing for the European form, just quietly. He hasn't won a race subsequently. I just thought I'd get that one in.
Yeah. How many? The thing is, Tim, how many have won a race after the Melbourne Cup? It's not great, is it?
It's a very good question. I'd have to have a look, because, I mean, there's a lot of horses that have been beaten in it, like So You Think, who go on and are very good afterwards. But it is our way down there, as you know, too. If we've got a horse that can run probably even 10 furlongs, certainly 12 furlongs, we'll send them around in the Melbourne Cup, because it's the big one down there. Yeah. It's a bit of a paradox, because we don't breed for it, and hence why the Europeans come down and they do breed for it and tend to win the race. But I'd have to go through the field, but there are plenty, actually, now that I think about it, that have won the Melbourne Cup and haven't really done a lot afterwards, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm thinking likes of, Cross Counter wasn't too bad, but I'm not quite sure did he win any?
He won in Dubai, did he not? Did he win or run second in Dubai? He ran a good race there anyway.
He ran a number of placed races. He definitely ran a number of placed races, because I know it took an interest in him after obviously winning. Rekindling, we know, didn't, and he got injured and what have you. But yeah, I just wonder. That's just something I haven't got the stats or the answer to that question.
To be fair, with Cross Counter, a little bit getting back to your point about Sir Lucan, he got him with no weight on his back. I mean, hindsight's a beautiful thing, but in hindsight, he was beautifully weighted.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping with Sir Lucan, that they just might, they were talking the other day about the possibility of him needing a run. That's the only thing, but I don't know. I mean, he's in there at a very low weight, and nice draw, and he can hold himself up in the first maybe 5 or 6. I would be very happy with him. And I'm going to finish just with a real big outsider, the Chosen One from New Zealand. On the exchanges at the moment, you're getting anything up to 70 to 1 or wherever. 4th last year, and I love a horse that places, because if we look back every year, there's a lot of horses who place and come back and place again. Like the Prince of Arran has shown us that, so anyone looking for a really big price that'll get a good run for your money, he could be the one. He's only got a half a kilo more than his weight last year. As I say, he came 4th last year, and if we're saying this mightn't be a strong field, he may well just get in the frame again for us.
Henry, I'm going to come to you next, because I always fancy you on a one-off race to give me a tip, and it'll come in. So I'm banking on you here for me to wake up early morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and think, right, I've got a bit of money in my betting account there, so I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it's the most exciting selection, but I just think Spanish Mission's a bit of a scumbag each way bet in this race, to be honest. You're getting around 5 to 1, and I'm sure there's going to be extra places leading up to the race on the day, things like that. You're probably going to get 5, 6, maybe even 7 places. And for me, I know there's a few people that might knock Spanish Mission, but I just can't see him being out the frame. I don't think I think it's been touched on by the other lads. I don't think this is the deepest renewal of the Melbourne Cup. The favourite does look pretty special, but 6-4 isn't for me. I'd much rather back Spanish Mission at 5-1. I mean, the UK horses, it's obvious, isn't it? They come over to Australia all the time. They improve, but I just think they're better than the Australian horses. We know they are. They've proven it multiple times. And
you are talking about the stayers here.
Well, yeah, obviously the sprinters is a different story, but with the Melbourne Cup being 2 miles.
Henry, when you say UK, you just mean UK, you don't mean Ireland, obviously.
Yeah, and obviously the Irish aren't too bad either, but with the likes of Aidan O'Brien not sending it over.
To be fair, Henry, the Germans won the Melbourne Cup before the English did. I just thought I'd let you know that as well.
Well, I think the English will be winning it this year, Tim, let's say that. I just think Spanish Mission's form this season, it's hard to knock. Basically, since Spanish Mission went to Andrew Baldwin around August last year, just a completely different horse. He's been really consistent. He's only had one bad run, and that was on very soft ground behind Trushan. And you look at his form this season, it's hard to knock. He's been running at a high level against decent stayers, beaten by the likes of Subjectivist, obviously beaten ahead by Stradivarius last time out. He won at York. It wasn't the deepest race, but that was over 1 mile 6 and 2 miles here at the Melbourne Cup. Although it is a 2 mile trip, you do need that little bit of turn of foot, that change of gear. And I do think Spanish Mission's got that as well. And it looks like he's being kept fresh with this in mind. And I just think Andrew Baldwin has had a quality season, hasn't he? And I think he can round it off with another big winner here. I just think 5-1, just a bit of a scumbag each way bet, and that'll do for me.
Where's he going to end up in the run, though? Because they tend to hold him up over here, and that kind of worries me a little bit. If you go back a few years ago, Yates won a Gold Cup. He went down to Melbourne, as it turned out. And I said to my friends down there, look, he's the best credentialed stayer we've ever had in the Melbourne Cup from overseas. But as it turns out, as Aidan O'Brien said afterwards, he just wasn't the right sort of horse for it, because he was sort of a relentless galloper. He didn't have that turn of foot. That's the only thing that worries me about Spanish Mission a little bit.
I think Yates was just all stamina, wasn't he? Yeah. Really? But with the Spanish Mission, he has got a bit of class. I think he previously, back in his career, he's won over 1 mile 4. Back in 2019, things like that. So he's definitely got a bit more speed than Yates, and I wouldn't be surprised if instructions are to obviously try and get him a bit more prominent, and if he can take up a nice position, I'm confident he'll at least hit the frame and hopefully go very close.
And Paul, finally over to you. Give us your Melbourne Cup tip.
I'll just make it 2 brief points and then a quick question just before I do. Just about the European, about the scaring the Europeans off. The first one, I can't get my head around why they're only allowed one run. I don't get the rationale on that one. The second one is they've had plenty of notice, the Europeans, to prepare. It's not as if we've lost in the Ebor in August, but we'll have a go at the Melbourne Cup instead. They've been given plenty of notice to comply with the regulations. So there's not a chance to scare the Europeans off. Just no one wants to see another. Basically, what happened last with Anthony Van Dijk, and that was my question. Was that the straw that broke the camel's back for these? The Anthony, with obviously Juggernaut connections, it was fair square on camera. What happened? Was that kind of basically why they brought all this stuff in?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it was a straw. It wasn't the only reason. You've got to remember that he was one of, I hate to say, many that had sort of broken down and gone wrong down there. And I think that just the pressure that's brought with all those, and the thing is, I'm not a vet, but to me, it can't be a coincidence. The last horse to die in the Melbourne Cup was either Australian or New Zealand's back in the 70s. And I know 1 or 2 people that blame the ground, but that argument annoys the hell out of me, because firstly, Australia has a lower fatality rate than England and Ireland, and that's not the jumps, I'm talking about flat. And that's not potting England and Ireland, because both nations have brought their fatality rate down. They're doing well, but that's a fact. The fatality rate in Australia is lower than here. Then I heard people sort of say, yeah, but the ground's too firm for the European horses. Well, bloody hell, have you ever been to New Zealand? I've got New Zealand relatives. I've been to New Zealand many times. New Zealand is wet even when it's complete sunshine. It's always wet. If you look at the list of the wettest countries in the world, it's about twice as high up the list as Ireland. And the Kiwis have won the Melbourne Cup. I think it's been 45 bred New Zealand horses win it. Goodness knows how many trainers have won it. Group 1 races all around Australia. Some of the best horses we've seen in Australia have been from New Zealand. So that doesn't add up either. But yep, I think it was I think they were worried beforehand, but given it was until the Europeans came down and these horses started dying, we hadn't seen one since 1979, which is 40-something years. I think it was the straw to break the camel's back. And, of course, he was such a high-profile horse, being a Derby winner, being with Aidan O'Brien. He ran an absolute belter in the Caulfield Cup with an unlucky second.
It was right in front of the camera as well, if he was a trailer, so just there in front of the whole world. So it's given a lot of ammunition to those groups that sort of the we hate everything that's fun groups. It really has. And as I said before, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, it's not just people that are sort of maybe considered a bit out there and a little bit away from the norm. There's now a lot of prominent people in Australia. If I give you an example, there's a campaign down there now called Up to the Cup. Now, there was nothing like that when I was living in Australia. There's another one that's called F the Cup. They're holding luncheons now, F the Cup luncheons. That never was happening when I was down there. I mean, it was probably right up there with the Ashes, the AFL Grand Finals, our proudest sporting piece. And now all of a sudden you've got a lot of prominent, well-known people that are sticking their fingers up at it. Thank you. Fancy just say 2 absolute flyers for the Melbourne Cup. I'd agree it's not the most competitive renewal. The 2 absolute darts I come down on was it was Floating Artist for Kieran Marr and Eustace. I know they've got a load of darts in this one, but I thought this was the standout for them. It was trained by Hannon back in the UK. Ran some nice races prior to going to us. It's coming here with a feather on its back, about 7.12 I think it's carrying. It's ran the longest trip. It's hit the 2 miles back in the UK. It hasn't tackled the 2 mile in Oz, but say doing in the UK, he should get it. He was only beaten a handful by Trushan at Salisbury last year, so obviously that form speaks for itself. Don't get me wrong, he was nowhere near it, but 4 or 5 lengths behind Trushan, I think you know what you're getting with it. I think he can run a big race, and I think he'll be the pick of the Marr and Eustace bunch. Twilight Payment, as we said, I think he'll put up another bold show, but he's another year older and he's got top weight this time, trying to look that round. So I think he'll run its race, but it'd be hard for it to repeat. The other one to come down on was the Chris Wallace Alino. I can see that going well. Its form's been dreadful in us this season, but I think they've deliberately run it over 1 mile 4, which is far too short for it. Won the Sydney Cup, which is obviously at the 2 mile trip. It's a big field, so he'll be okay in that field. He hasn't been, again, another one back in the UK, but he was never a million miles behind Spanish Mission at Donny, but he's 4 times the price. I think they've been up to something with the short trips this year after the Sydney Cup. Put it back up here, and I think that'll be the one. So that'll be my main bet, Salino for Waller, and then Floating Artist for Marr and Eustace.
Right, lads, one word. I'm going to come round to you all. Tim, then Darren, then Henry, then Paul. Your Melbourne Cup selection, please.
Okay, incentivise. I'm sorry to be boring, lads, after the big price winner last year, but I really do think he's the most likely winner of the race.
I go Sir Lucan. Featherweight, won't catch him.
Yeah, Spanish Mission for me.
I'll go Salino at 25. That'll be my pick in the early hours.
That's very good with me. Right, lads, we're going to go on to the Breeders' Cup. Henry, I believe that you have got to shoot off very soon. So without wasting your time for all the research you've done, just fly through with some of your main Breeders' Cup fancies, and then we're going to go through it a lot more thoroughly with Tim, Darren and Paul. So Henry, the floor is yours.
Yeah, just a few. Well, I'll just quickly run through them. So in the juvenile turf, I do think Modern Games will be tough to beat. Got plenty of runs under his belt, which I think will do him good in a race of this nature, especially with the travel as well, things like that. He stepped up well. He won an nursery, got 2 starts back, and then last time out he won a Group 3 level at Newmarket, and I think that might be the making of him. I think he'll continue to improve. You can't really go wrong with a Charlie Appleby 2-year-old this season, and I think 3-1's fair enough. In the same race, I think Anna Polis could run a big race as well. Unbeaten in 2 starts, holds portfolio company. I beat that last time out, which they line up again. I think that form will be confirmed, and being out of a war front, you'd expect his 2-year-old season to be his best. And of course, Todd Pletcher knows the time of day, so I think he's around 9-10-1. He might be one for each way plays. In the turf, I think it's obvious. I think Tanawa, she's going to be very tough to beat. She won this last season. Grounds will be no problem. I'd personally say she was the best horse in the yard. Potentially, she was just a little bit maybe outstayed in the last 100 yards. She was coming up the inside as well, and obviously the winner and a couple of the others were coming down the outside. So I think compensation awaits for her, and she's one for your doubles and trebles at 13-8. In the Classic, I think Nick Scow will win. Again, won the Dirt Mile last year impressively. First 2 starts this season were a little bit underwhelming, but it appeared to need the run. Really seemed to be a bit flat, and there was question marks, but came right back to himself, winning the last 3 starts. Proven over 1 mile, 1 furlong. I know this is 1 mile 2, but the way he's been running through the line over that trip, I don't think this trip will be a problem. He's got the pace to get to the front, which is important on the dirt track. So he's another strong one. But saving me nap for the last one, and it's in the mile. I think Pearls Galore will give Paddy Toomey a nice win in the mile. Nice tasty price, 12-1. Basically won a pair of Group 3 as well, a Fairy House in Tipperary over the summer, and then stepped up to Group 1 company for the first time in the Matron Stakes at Leopardstown. Only beaten in neck there. I know it was a bit of a messy race, but I think on all known form, that's one of the strongest pieces of form in this race. Then went on to Longchamp on half day and finished second behind favourite for this race, Space Blues. Obviously, Space Blues is going to be around 5-2, 11-4, and I just think Pearls Galore maybe at the front a little bit too soon there. Took it up 2 furlongs out and a bit of a sit and duck, and I thought done well to hold on for second. I don't think heavy ground's what Pearls Galore wants, and I don't think he'll get that on Breeders' Cup Day. Should get better grounds, which will really suit. And I just think this mile trip will suit a lot more than, obviously it was 7 furlongs at Longchamp, and I just think the mile will suit Pearls Galore more than it'll suit Space Blues. And I just think 12-1 is one of the best bets I've seen for a long time, given the fact I think it's mainly due to connections. It's that big. Paddy Toomey's confirmed he's definitely going for the Breeders' Cup with Pearls Galore. So that'll be my nap of the Breeders' Cup. 12-1. Get on.
Eddie, thoroughly enjoyable. Go and enjoy yourself playing for the sides. Go and reenact Daniel Agger against West Ham on his Anfield debut, because I know you've got a hell of a left peg on you. So I know you'll go and do that at Goals and Everton. Right, so I've got...
I don't know about that, Will, but thanks everyone. Thanks, Tim. I'm sure you'll get plenty of winners between you, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Cheers, Henry. Right, well, preview a few of the Breeders' Cup races then, lads. Tim, we're going to start with you. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile over the extended mile. Jack Christopher, 7-4 favourites. Won the Grade 1 Champagne Stakes at Belmont last time out. Do you think this is a one of those races where you think, we'll lump on it and bolster your war chest ahead of a big 2 days?
Oh, well, I do, but not with Jack Christopher. I actually like one here at a bit of a price. I like Jack Christopher. He's very good. He won his maiden by 9 lengths. He's run some big figures, and he's certainly the danger of my selection. He ran a big number, actually, when an easy winner of the Champagne Stakes at Belmont. There's a horse here at a bit of a price. Is one of my better results, you might say, at the Breeders this year. Rattle and Roll from the Kenny McPeak yard. He won the Breeders' Futurity by 4.5 lengths at Keeneland last time out. He came from well off the pace. I was actually on Sky that night, and I tipped him up on air. I think he was about 8 or 9-1. I'll tell you one thing about this horse is he's a horse that's going forward very quickly. He's won 2 from 4, and it could easily be 3 from 4. His first start was over an unsuitable 6 furlongs. The next start, he looked all over the winner and ran off the track. And then he came out and won his maiden despite plenty of bad luck. Last time out is the first time he's gone around in the race and nothing's happened. Everything's gone smoothly. And he's dotted up by 4.5 lengths. Could have been further. The other thing about the Juvenile this year, and I know you could say this most years, but there is just so much pace here. Jack Christopher goes forward. Bob Baffert's got runners there that are going to go forward. It's really going to suit Rattle and Roll. Jack Christopher is my danger. I wouldn't put anyone off, but I really do think Rattle and Roll's going to run a hell of a race here. And last time I had a look, you could still get around about 9-1.
Paul, I was with you about, an hour and a half ago, and you're very sweet on Jack Christopher, aren't you?
Yeah, it's so boring, but I'm all over the favourite here, Jack Christopher. Probably my nap for the 2 days, to be honest, and I'll be having a good bet on him, loading up, but obviously responsibly. The Champagne Stakes he won last time out, for me, by far and away, is the best 2-year-old performance of the US season. Showing he was the real deal there, slammed quality opposition, he's down. The time on the clock weren't spectacular, eye-watering, but it was fine. I know there was a couple, the last quarter mile said the sectionals were slow, but the race was over and he's basically getting eased down, the work had been done. Granted, the only slight 2 negatives we can come up with, Chad's better obviously was turf horses rather than the dirt, but he's had a couple of winners on the dirt, so it's not really a massive concern. I think the main one, the only thing I can come up with is the 2 bends, which is something he's never faced before. He's obviously he's going to have done a lot of work on the gallops. He's going to be schooled around the 2 bends, but until you get in a race, you can't really say it, because it's a totally different race, the 1 bend to the 2. I think he had another one. It was exact newspaper record. I think that was the same, unbeatable round 1 bend, but when she got round to the 2, she got found out. But I don't think this will be the problem with this guy. He's versatile. I just think he's an absolute jail case. I'll be all over him. It was 5-2 before about a week ago, 7-4 now. So I'm sitting on me 5-2, and I'll top up again at 7-4. I think he's a jail case, sir.
Paul doesn't normally top off a 7-4 unless he fancies something. Darren, is 7-4 short enough for you, or would you be lapping that up?
No, too short for me, Will. I actually have a slight fancy for the horse that came second to Jack Christopher in his last run, Command Performance. I think when Jack Christopher went for home at the Torn, he had a run on the field. Command Performance made up good ground all the way to the line. If you look at it, I think the extra distance here might just help see him home. Looking at value, Command Performance 7-1. Jack Christopher, his 13th 8, and probably will leave him go solid more than that. I'd be quite happy to take him on with Command Performance, but first race of the meeting, there's no way I'll be lumping on Jack Christopher.
Darren, just touching away from the racing, what's your plans normally on the Breeders' Cup weekends? Obviously over Friday, Saturday. What is it for you? Because it's just a meeting that as Henry pointed out before, it's just nice time for us. You can have a few drinks in the night time and enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it, and I normally depending on the times, sometimes I go down to the local pub, and we'd watch them there, depending on what finishing time and that. But I have to agree with the guys, like even at home here when I put it on every year, the missus comes in to watch some of it and that, because the pomp and everything else is just brilliant, and they know how to put on a festival, that's for sure. Yeah, but I probably. I'm thinking watch it at home and enjoy it here. I think I've got too used to the lockdowns now to be sitting in and watching me racing.
Fair. When it's at this time on the West Coast, though, when it's a little bit later, it doesn't get me juices flowing as much. Though when it's 11:30, the classic, there's not enough ale in the tank. I need the 1:30, 2 o'clock classic. So made up it's back on the West Coast.
Yeah, definitely, Paul. Right, we'll go on, lad. Sorry.
No, I was going to say I'd be quite opposite now. I'd be quite happy for the classic finishing up half 11, 12 o'clock, and I have done my losses early and get to bed.
Good stuff, lads. Well, we'll go on to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Tab over the mile trip, which Henry tips up Modern Games 7-2 favourite for Charlie Appleby. It's dominated by the European runners, 2 Bowie Legends for Hugo Palmer, 9-2. 3 to pass 6 winners have been from Europe. Darren, I'll come back to you first. Do you think this is one that's going to come back across the Atlantic Sea?
Well, it certainly could. He's certainly targeted.
It's an ocean, I beg your pardon. My geography teacher returning his grave.
Yeah, it certainly could. I mean, Charlie Appleby certainly targeted this with Modern Games after winning the Group 3 at Newmarket. And, you know, I wouldn't be putting anyone off backing him. But I looked through it and I fancy a local one, actually, especially at the price each way, Slipstream. I think 14-1 is pretty good, best price out there. The trainer's in form. He won the Futurity in Belmont and was impressive. And if you look at it, he looks like there's a lot more in the tank there that he won nice and cozy, to be honest with you. And that win guaranteed him a place in the sprint, Torf sprint. But from what I can read, connections seem to be leaning towards this, which I'd be hoping he will do. And I do think this is within the scope. Dubai legend, that form took a bit of a hit with Royal Patronage, finishing last in Luxembourg Futurity. So I'm not quite sure I could be confident there. But certainly, yeah, Slipstream each way, 14-1. I think there's a lot more in the tank there, and they might just keep it at home this year.
Tim, comes to you next.
Yeah, look, I'm also going to side with one of the home runners, but I've gone with Tiz the Bomb from the Kenny McPeak yard. He's quite a nice colt. He's won 3 from 4. And I think American Horses, I think I'm right in saying, I think they've won 2 of the last 3 renewals of this, if I remember correctly. To be fair, he does still look a little bit raw, but if he puts it all together, I think he could really serve it up to the Europeans. Plus, he's got home ground advantage. I like the way he won last time out. He won a race called the Castle and Key Bourbon Stakes at Keeneland. Now, on that occasion, he actually gassed from an outside stall and then sat up on the speed, did a bit of work early, and I kind of thought 3.5 furlongs out, he might be in a bit of trouble. And I love seeing this in a young horse that looks like they're in a bit of trouble, and all of a sudden the rider gives them a dig and they find that gear that you don't really expect. I think there's a fair bit of improvement there. To be fair, he will need to run a career best, but I think it's probably there. And I think at the prices, and he too, I haven't had a look today, but I backed him with a double figures about a week ago. So he should be at a pretty good price, and I think he could run a race. But I've got to say, I think Modern Games from the Europeans will be tough to beat as well for Charlie Appleby.
12-1 there still, Tim. So get on now if you still fancy and want to top up. And Paul, finally over to you.
Sorry, sound broke up a little bit, but coming to me, it's Annapolis or Annapolis, however you pronounce it, for Todd Fletcher for me. I think Henry touched on him just before he went. He just checked there, about 9-1, so a very, very, very fair price. He's typical and exposed juvenile, only had the 2 runs, so we haven't got to the bottom of him yet. Won his maiden, which albeit was a bit of an egg and spoon race, but he's done it well enough by 5 lengths. And then he threw him into the Pilgrim Stakes, the Grade 2, which last year's winner, which I tipped up. I don't know if it was mentioned, about 33-1. So it come from the same race as that. And in fact, that Pilgrim race, 3 of the last 5 winners have won that race. So it looks to me to be the top trial for it. And he won it well enough. Will and Attitude battled it with it was one of Chad Brown's portfolio company, who's no mug himself. They were miles clear of the rest. It was only a 4-runner race, but them 2 pulled well clear. Ortiz wasn't very hard on him. He made his move at the top of the straight, give him 2 taps of the stick about at the 2 pole, and then the rest was hands in here. It was always holding them, and if anything, he was pulling away at the line. Again, the clock wasn't too clever, but it was a 4-runner race. It was a dawdle up front, so I wouldn't pay too much. I think he'll be fine because, albeit it was an egg and spoon, but he come off the pace on his maiden, so not too worried about getting done for the turn of foot. Darren mentioned this, the Europeans do well in it, so you've always got to respect them. But I'd have to slightly disagree. I think the 1-2 for the Europeans a bit. First of all, it's usually Aiden who sends the main hand for this, so I'm surprised. I think he's got 1 representative who's he's neither here or there in the market, so it's usually him with a strong hand, but it'll be of the Europeans. I would go for the Dubai legend for Hugo Palmer. I think he'll give him the most to think about my selection. He was well backed on debut and won effortlessly, to be fair. Next time out, not so good, but I think the key piece of form with that, he was only 2 lengths behind the best 2-year-old in the country, native trail for Appleby. So 2 lengths behind that, put some bang in there for this, but I think this will stay with the home team for Annapolis and Todd Fletcher.
The thing about the Bowie Legend, if I could just jump in, sorry, he's rated 116. Right. 116 for a race like this is a very high rating. So I take your point. If he runs the form, the Bowie Legend, that's of course if we can buy into Native Trails rating. But yeah, 116. He's by far in the when I say by far in the way, I think I'll stand corrected. Modern Games. I am doing this off the top of my head. I haven't got it written down, but I think he's about 111, and he'd be the second highest rated. So if you're betting in the race purely on ratings, he's the one you'd be with.
Yeah, I think that Native Trail for it's not even a question. He's top 2-year-old in the UK and Ireland. So I think if you're getting near him, you're coming here bang with a chance. But say 9-1, 10-1 for the American. I'll stick with that. But they've definitely been too bad. Legends will be the pick for Europe.
Paul, you'd like to think that Charlie Appleby has a good barometer on Dubai Legend, wouldn't you? As you say.
Yeah, he's got him spot. As I say, he's going to keep the kid gloves on the Native Trail. Not going to send him over here. Because remember Battleground last year for I think Aiden sent it over. That was the next best thing since. So I don't know if it does ruin him, because I can't think of, again, just going back to last year's winner, Fire at Will. It's absolutely stunk the gaff out since. So I don't know if this race is a bit of a
Outstrip won as well for Appleby, didn't he? A few years ago.
Say again.
Outstrip won a few years ago for Appleby as well.
Yeah, but it seems to be maybe the train for the minute for this. I don't know, but they're not going to send the best 3 year. They'll with the Stallion prospect. They're not going to say they'll keep it at home. So he'll have a barometer on it. But as I say, it's like I said, the rating there with the Hugo Palmer's one. I think. So he's got plenty of other chances as well, Appleby. So I think there's bigger things ahead for the Native Trail on home shows.
Definitely. Well, one race where they certainly will be going for, and it will be a big prize to plunder, is the Breeders' Cup Mile, which we'll move on to, which was won by Order Australia last year and Expert High in 2018. So the Europeans know how to win this, and Space Blues is the 5-2 favourites. Paul, I'm going to stick with you because Space Blues obviously won the 7th furlong race on Arc Day at Longchamp. Mother Earth 7-1, the 1,000 guineas winner. Space Blues for me, it just seems like a 7 furlong specialist. So 5-2 for me. I just can't have it whatsoever.
Yeah, I can't stand this horse. I've tried to get him beat every time this season. I got absolutely smoked. And then I think the one time I did beat him was at Goodwood when he ran a stinker. I think Kim Ross for Rafe Becker beat it. He's looked imperious, particularly in his last 2 starts, but say the 4A, I'm not too sold on that form. It's just the travelling for me. I know he's won in France, but I'm not going to count that because it's literally over the water to 40, however long it takes. And then
it takes you longer to get over to New Brighton and from Liverpool to New Brighton, doesn't it?
Exactly, that's what I mean. So France, I'm going to call that a whole race. I'll give him props. He won in Saudi, but what did he beat there? The main question mark for me is Maidan. He's went over there twice and stunk the gaff out. So I think travelling could be the issue to get him beat. Again, don't get me wrong, it might just be bitter because he's done me so much this season. But as I say, he started in February. He's had a bit of a long season. He's not as an absolute premium trip of 7. I know there's not much 7 furlong to a mile, but I think there's enough question marks to take him on. You've got Mo Force, and he's beat Smooth Like Straight by short distances twice. But I don't like the Peter Miller horses unless they're in a sprint. Blowout, if that comes here, that'll be interesting, but I think she's going to go the filly and mare's turf. So the one I've plucked on is In Love. Brazilian bred. It won on debut in Keeneland. Again, it was an offer race that it come to, but they won it nicely enough. It took some time for the penny to drop because it lost its last. I think it lost its next 2. But then since then, the 2 laboured efforts, he's up to a hat trick now. Won a Grade 1 last time out to Keeneland. Won it from midfield, made a move out to the 2 pole, and then from there it was never in doubt. There's quite a few of these at double entries as well. So, I think the race is going to cut off. She's about 12-1 shot now, so I can see it going off 6-7 to the day. So I'll be on now at me 12 because I know it's 100% going to come here. It's not going to be 12s. The only slight nick, it hasn't run on the West Coast yet, so it's got to answer that question. But so have a few of the others. Versatile running style, come in off the pace, come in making all, come in from midfield. So the track wouldn't give me too much concerns. So the rest of the home challenge, not so sold on. The Europeans, obviously Space Blues could come in again, travel, and then put it to bed at the one pole like it usually does. But at the price of 12, when I think it'll go off at 6s, I'll go for In Love.
Tim, I've never laid a horse in my life, but if it was going, it would be Space Blues here, because I just can't see him getting a mile trip.
Yeah, look, I don't know about that. I think you've got to remember it's a little bit like when the European horses go down to Australia. They're different types of tracks. It's very flat. It's only about seven and a bit furlongs in circumference, the turf track. I don't have an issue with him running the mile over there. I think he will. My issue is going to be where he ends up in the run. I know he was impressive on the Foray Day. I mean, the Foray, to be honest with you, it's a funny race because we've had a lot of good winners of it, but it normally doesn't have a lot of depth. Quite often it's a soft hit. But the way he picked up that day on quite testing ground was hugely impressive. But the difference being he's going to get to Del Mar and he's probably going to have to start picking up around that bend on the far side. And I just think the race might not quite set up for him, in an ideal fashion. Now, at the prices, I'd prefer to take him on. I certainly wouldn't, when I say that, I wouldn't be on the exchanges lane him. I kind of think that given the way the race is probably going to set up, I'd prefer to leave him alone. There's a local horse here called Mo Forza. Now, he's won 8 from 14. He's a good horse. He won a Grade 1 last season. He goes really well at Del Mar. He's won his last 3 there. And if you look at his overall profile, when he's been beaten, it's usually when they've taken him to the East Coast. He's a completely different horse at the West Coast. He's got some big figures there into the hundreds. I'm talking about speed ratings, not the time form or the official ratings. So when you get into the hundreds, you're talking about a fairly serious horse. His run style will be the layup in behind the speed somewhere. So provided he gets a draw, I can just see him getting a really nice run. Loves the mile, loves Del Mar. I mean, he might not quite have the credentials of one or two of the Europeans, but I really do think he's going to run you a hell of a race, and he should be at a bit of a price.
The training up of you, he's a sprinter, and he's Peter Miller with most of his.
Yeah, but if you look at Mo Forza and you go through his form, I mean, I'm just having a look at wins here. He's won his last 4. They've been over the mile. I mean, it wouldn't faze me at all. It would not faze me at all. I just think this horse goes well at Del Mar. I think he goes well over the mile. I think the race will set up a lot nicer for him. We haven't had the barrier draw, but let's work on the theory that all things are fair on the day. I think it'll set up a lot nicer for him than it will for a few of the Europeans. I wouldn't want to be getting too far back on this track in a quality race like that. You basically, what you've got to do, I know it's dependent on how they run the race. Unless they go ridiculous on the front at Del Mar, what you've got to do, you've got to start making your run around that back turn. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you're all right in lesser races, but in good races, even if they're going to the reasonable tempo, you've got horses on the front end and they're going to keep going. So you've got to take off early, and that's what worries me with Space Blues. It's not his form. I've got no concerns. I agree with you guys. I don't think he's a natural miler over here, but in America, I think it's very different. So on a track like that, but I just worry how it was set up for him. Mo Forza to me would be the safe bet because no matter what happens, provided he gets a draw, he's going to come out and run some sort of race.
And Darren, over to you. I mean, Mother Earth, 7 to 1, 1,000 guineas when you can't be having air, can you? For your for being pro Ireland, you surely can't be backing it here.
Well, did you look at my notes?
I haven't, unfortunately. But come on, they're running in the QE2. It just left a lot to be wanting, didn't it?
It did. But I don't know about you guys, but this is one of the races that I look forward to so much, and I was a bit. I wasn't too awed by the field, to be honest with you. It's a shame that we didn't get a few more over from Europe and that. I came down. I'm split between two, and Mother Earth is one of them. Because I do think she, when she has run to form, her form is pretty good. I know she was well beaten by Eid, but like she was running to the line. That was her first time to be outside the first 3 in 8 runs. So for all her not winning, she is getting the place. I was hoping for a better price. I see there she's 8-1. I would have liked it a little bit better each way on her. Like I say, she does. She runs to the line. She does get in the place money. But herself on Mo Forza, I won't repeat some of what Tim said. I just think he just looks at home there, and he could easily be the local one this year that will do it, just with the lack of maybe the quality that I was hoping we might have seen. Space Blues, I'm a little bit like Paul. There's something about the horse. I don't know what it is. He could probably come out and win everything, and I still be wondering how good is he? It was heavy ground in France, so I'm thinking he would probably get that. He'd probably get the American Mile, but will he like the ground? Because like Dermot Weld was even talking about it being a very firm surface compared to air firm. So the only thing about Mo Forza was like some of his wins have been in small fields, so it'd be interesting to see if how many go. But I'm going to go Mother Earth each way in the hope that she might drift.
What a fool I've made myself look like there, Darren. I thought you were going to go well against it. Right, we'll go on to the Breeders' Cup Turf over 1.5 miles. 6 of the last 8 winners have come from Europe, and last year's winner was Tarnawa, who ran an absolutely superb race in the arc. So unlucky, probably as Henry touched upon it, the ground got the better of it. Darren, do you think that she will bounce back and regain a crown?
Yeah, I'd be quite confident with Tarnawa here. For me, her form is a banker. As said previously, Dermot Weld did say he was concerned with the ground, but I think that's maybe the only thing that beats her really. If she handles it, she wins. Colin Keane back on board after previous win. 11 to 8 could look huge by the end of the night. I'm not a big favourite backer, but certainly I would think she's as close to a banker as we can get. And I know he said this is possibly her last run, maybe her second last run if she goes to Hong Kong, which hopefully she will. But certainly I would look at her as a banker, definitely. In each way shot, which I'm always looking for, maybe Channel Maker. She was toured behind Tarnawa and Magical in this race last year. If our form holds up, he can get into the first 3 again at 25 to 1 at the moment. But at age 7, probably not improving at this stage. But it's interesting that William Mott is 25% in the last 14 days as well, so he's on form. But penalty kick for Tarnawa.
Tim, come on, you've got to give us something juicier than that.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say to Darren is Tarnawa goes to the Arc, right? And we blame the ground, despite the fact she won a Group 1 at the Arc the year before on ground that was just as testy. Now we've got, and please don't get me wrong, anyone that's ever listened to me talk, I am as big a fan of Dermot Weld as anyone in Ireland, anyone in the world. But now we're saying the ground might be too quick. Well, she won the bloody Breeders at Keeneland on firm ground. I mean, come on, guys. You can't have it all ways. Either she goes on the ground or she doesn't. She obviously goes on rain affected. She obviously goes on good ground. But having said all of that, I agree with Darren 100%. I can't see how you can take her on. I think she actually won this race last year. The most impressive thing for me was I thought she won the race despite the race not setting up nicely for her. She came from the back of the field, and really the race wasn't run that quickly. As I said, she won it on firm ground. All that firm ground talk is a load of rubbish, honestly. I agree absolutely with Darren. I think she's the horse to beat. If you want one of the locals, domestic spending is pretty good. He's won 6 from 8. He's a 3-time Grade 1 winner. He did run a very big figure when winning the Manhattan at Belmont 2 runs ago. He actually had Guffo 6 lengths in behind, who lines up here or should be lining up here as well. Last seen with an unlucky second in a Grade 1 at Arlington in August. Got the right trainer. He's with Chad Brown. this to me is a race that basically you hand over to the Europeans before it's even run. So I'm not going to tip domestic spending up as the winner, but if you want a little bit of value maybe for the forecast, Tanawa on top, I just think she wins this, and I think domestic spending could run you a cheeky race and hopefully grab second.
Paul, what do you reckon? Is this a cake over for Tanawa?
No, I've got to have to disagree. I love Tanawa. Again, back to last year, won a few quid, and 100% she's the best horse in the race and the most likely winner. But just at the compressed odds, and also I think my main gripe with her, she was trained to the minute for the Arc, so there was all the eggs in one basket for the Arc. So that gives me a bit of pause to pause. This is her last race as well, so maybe this is a bit of an afterthought. And as I say, all the eggs were in the Arc basket. She's really good, so she might be able to beat them anyway, you know, at 80-90%, blah, blah. But there's enough doubt for me to take her on. I do think it'll go to Europe and the UK, but I'll go for Yabir for Godolphin and the boys in blue and Mr. Appleby. He's well tried for a 3-year-old, admittedly, and he's had a bit of a long season, but he's come into his own since he was gelded back in May. The only blot on his copybook this season was in the Gordon Stakes at Goodwood, but he ran 2-3 and blew his chance away. They said he had no chance. Since then, he's put a sequence together, accumulating his best win was in the Jockey Club Derby at Belmont. He absolutely blew the start there. Again, I don't know what the in runner was, but it's, say, 60-70 to 1 just after 2 furlongs. He absolutely blew it. Then, of course, he starts getting back into it, but you think he's used up all his energy to get back into it, but he absolutely sluices past them and then still carried on running away from them at the end. So I don't know where he found that, because that was hands down his best performance by an absolute country mile. He'll obviously need to settle as he can race keen, and that'll absolutely set it up on a tee for Tanawa to close him down. But if he can settle, I think he's well in the chance, about 13 to 2, 7 to 1, absolute fair price. I'd rather a little smaller stake on that rather than lumping on Tanawa. If he settles, I think he's a knock and bet. Appleby will have him bang on for this, and it could be another grade 1 for the all conquering Godolphin and Appleby.
And the final race we're going to preview, lads, is the showpiece event. It is the Breeders' Cup Classic, and it looks like Brad Cox might have the winner in Nick's Go or Essential Quality. Nick's Go 9 to 4, Essential Quality 11 to 4. Do you think it goes to Cox, or would you be looking for elsewhere to oppose those two main protagonists?
Look, I've got to be honest, from a betting perspective, I think this is a really tough race this year. I'm a big fan of Nick's Go. I think I flagged him up on this show last year. I actually backed him at 15 to 2 when he won the mile race on the anti-post, obviously, and then not long afterwards, the favourite came out and everything fell into place. He went off 7 to 4. He was actually my nap at the meeting. So I do like the horse, but I think that he's vulnerable at 10 furlongs. I know he's won at 9 furlongs, but that extra furlong, especially in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic, it's a long furlong. In a way, if my selection doesn't win, I'd love to see him win it, because he has been wonderful to me. He really has. I think Essential Quality would probably be the play. I wouldn't put you off horses like Medina Spirit or Hot Rod Charlie either, but Essential Quality, you've got to remember, he's won 8 from 9. His only defeat was in the Derby behind Medina Spirit, and he got smashed up early, got put out of position, so there was genuine excuses. He's subsequently gone on to continue winning. He's won the Travis, he's won the Belmont Stakes as well. He's a 3-year-old, but 3-year-olds have a good record in this race. Since the turn of the century, I think there's been 7 winners. Authentic won it last year as a 3-year-old. The 3-year-olds actually get, and we've got a few here, so it's probably not as important this year as it has been in previous years, but Nick's Go's got to give £4 to 3-year-old, and people go, £4, it's only £4. Well, in a 10 furlong race, it's got the pressure that the Breeders' Cup Classic has got in November. I think that's a very generous allowance. He's a natural stalker, and provided he draws handy, he should be in a nice soft commute. The knock would be he's run some big figures, but he hasn't run those sort of figures you'd probably expect from a Breeders' Cup Classic winner. But I kind of get the feeling, if you watch him, he's the sort of horse that's there. He probably only just does enough. You know, I've had a few horses like that. I remember there was a very good miler over here a few years back called Solo. He was exactly the same, you know, and I kind of think that he's got it within him, and I think it'll come out hopefully in the Classic. But I think he's the one to be with. But for mine, it looks really open this year.
Darren, come over to you next on the showpiece affair of the meeting. Who would you like in this race?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I wouldn't have any major fancy in it. The essential quality, Nick's Go. I think it's between the two of them. And I would probably just go with essential quality coming into the race with great. If you go back to the Kentucky Derby, he was wide all the way around, and just on the bend, Red Hot Charlie slightly veered off his racing line and pushed them just a little bit out wider. He ran really well, and with a smoother trip, I think he may well have won. I don't know whether going through this, I was put off by the whole Medina Spirit being in it, and I was reading up around the conditions that Bob Baffert has in his stables and that for the Breeders' Cup, with extra security and investigators and Breeders' Cup executives watching the barn and cameras and all that. I think that just kind of put me off the race, to be honest with you. I'll sit this one out. I think it'd be between the two favourites at the top of the market.
Can I just jump in there, Will, if it's all right? Because Darren mentions about Bob Baffert. Isn't it really interesting? Because it's a state-to-state system over there. At the moment, Bob's got a 2-year suspension at Churchill Downs. Now, if you're an owner and you've got a 2-year-old with Bob Baffert at the moment, it's just come out and run some big figure and looks like a Derby hope next year. Bob Baffert can't send it to the Derby unless he wins some sort of appeal. What do? Do you take the horse off him? Do you stay loyal? I mean, it's just a really weird scenario.
No, you take the horse, Tim. You take the horse.
Yeah, well, I would too. It's the Derby. I mean, you have to. And as we know, you win the Derby, the horse is worth 20 million at least overnight, if not more.
Yeah.
And Paul, I know you've got a real fancy in this race, so the floor's yours to get the punters if they're down on the floor and they feel like Tyson Fury being hit by a Deontay Wilder right hand. You've got to pick them up off the canvas, so the floor's yours.
You can win it back here on essential quality if you're down. I'm gutted Life is Good isn't going. Again, it was with Bob Baffert, but it's moved. I think that would give it a good shot because I think that's a superstar, but they've rerouted after the mile where it's an 11 to 10 shot, so you can see why he's done it. They've got a penalty kick to win a grade one in the Breeders' Cup, or you can take on the two Brad Cox horses, so I can understand why they moved it, but it would have been some spectacle. So that leaves it open for, as I say, for the essential quality. You've got Hot Rod Charlie and Medina Spirit, so you can't say it's a match bet. Again, I won't talk about the latter name Medina Spirit. Enough's been said about the trade, the handler there. But it's an absolute match bet between the two Cox pairs, and you can make strong case for either. But I'll take the bigger price on essential quality. Model consistency, even his only defeat, as Tim mentioned there, he got bumped out the stalls and then got carried off his line right down the straight. Didn't have the kick to close, but I think it was not so much fall out the stalls, but it was getting carried out, which finished him. But other than that, he's been flawless. There's definitely classy and flashier horses down him in the race and in training, but he's just grit and heart and he wants to win. He's won the Travers, won the Belmont. Nick's Go's more easy on the eye, more impressive. He eats up the ground, that big gallop and stride. And obviously you don't want to let him get too much of a lead, but I think essential quality will be about 3 or 4 lengths behind him. Go 2 or 3 back and he'll get him down the straight. I didn't know that Nick's Go, he's that well ran until I was looking today. He ran 21 times as a 5-year-old, so I don't know if there's enough miles on the clock there with him. The thing with essential quality, he's never run a bad race, whereas Nick's Go can throw the odd stinker in. So I think there's more to prove for Nick's Go. So I'll take the tried and tested the essential quality at the bigger price, and I think he'll go back to back in the Breeders.
Superb stuff, lads. Right, we will go on to your naps and next best for either the Melbourne Cup, something on the Melbourne Cup cards, or the Breeders' Cup card. So, Tim, I want your nap and your next best bet on the international racing scene in the next few days.
Okay, Incentivise wins the Melbourne Cup. He'll be the nap. Installs a bit of pride in the Australian Middle Division horses, and hopefully Peter Moody brings him over here next year and he kicks a bit of butt. My next best at a big price is Rattle and Roll in the Juvenile. I think he might run over the top of Jack Christopher in a race that's likely to be run very quickly, which will suit him.
Darren, next to you.
I go Sir Lucan to win each way the Melbourne Cup. And I will go Slipstream each way in the Juvenile Turf. Next best.
And Paul, finally to you.
Just before that, can I just ask Tim on this stuff? Letruska, is she the next superstar, or would you be taking her on?
I wouldn't be taking her on, put it that way. I don't know if I'd lump on. It's probably a race I'm quite happy to sit back and watch. It's a race, actually, for a fillies race. It's a race that continually throws up good contests, but I think she'll probably win it. She looks a superstar. She's hugely consistent. She's got big numbers there. I think she wins it. She'd certainly be my selection, as boring as that is.
Cool. My napper will be Annapolis, and my MB, I'll go your beer in the name of skid. The race is gone up on me, but your beer in the turf, beg your pardon.
Brilliant stuff, lads. Well, Tim, thanks very much again for joining us on our Melbourne Cup and Breeders' Cup special. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I hope you are all well, and thanks very much for joining us, Darren and Paul. A pleasure as always. You've been listening to the On the Nod pods. Check out OTN Sports. And Tim, just before I go, charity bet. You've got a £10 free bet, so the floor is yours. Get it on and give us your charity.
Okay, well, I'm not going to say let's put 10 quid on Incentivise. I think that's absolutely wrong. So how about we have 10 quid on Rattle and Roll in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at a bit of a price?
That sounds good for me. I'll have a tenner on myself. You've been listening to the On the Nod podcast, brought to you by otnsports.co.uk. Check out otnsports.co.uk for all your best football, racing and golf tips. I've been your host, Will Rooney, joined by Sky Sports Racing's Tim Carroll, Darren Butler and Paul Martin. Join us again next time. Thank you very much for listening and goodbye.